everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast. And today I'm joined once again by Associate Programmer for the Paisley Book Festival, Jess Orr. Hello, Jess.
Hi, Alistair.
So this year's festival is going to be on between the 15th and 17th of May. So we are kind of a month ahead of that. How are you feeling, between when it's almost upon you?
Yeah, I'm feeling excited. The team have had the first ever Paisley Arts Festival, I think, was last month in March.
Mm.
So they've been really busy, but we still had our program raring to go for the book festival since January. So we're just excited to do the last few weeks of run up now and get ready to welcome everybody into the Paisley Town Hall and the Paisley Central Library again.
Yeah, Paisley's kind of cultural identity over the last few years, and I think the book festival has been central to this, has really kind of raised, there's a lot of new things going on.
Yeah, there's it's nice to see that program really building now over the last couple of years, especially now that the so many of the venues in Paisley have reopened, and I think I think pretty much that program of is complete now with the museum reopening as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's really exciting to see all those venues kind of filled with lots of cultural activity and for the book festival, which has kind of been there, throughout that period of
Yeah.
various venues. But, we've had a few iterations and we've moved around a little bit in different spaces. And obviously now found our home in the town hall and the library to be joined by these other new pop-up festivals, as well as the year-round cultural program that One Wren puts together, which I think is really exciting and kind of complements these moments where we have a particular focus on books and literature or on different types of art. And then the year-round program kind of has little highlights from that kind of pop up throughout the year. So yeah, it's really vibrant, really exciting, and really happy to be part of it.
I was thinking about previous festivals. How long's the book festival been going?
So we started in it was February 2020. It was the first festival, which was a bit of an odd moment to have a festival looking back on it. So that was the first one, and that was in the Arts Centre before it was closed for its big renovation.
Yeah,
So that was like that happened, and then we had a couple of very strange years where we were sort of digitally delivering the
of
festival and
course.
trying to get back to audiences coming along in person. We were at the UWS Student Union for a couple of years, and then from 2024, this will be our third festival where we're fully stationed in the town hall and the library, the new library. So
And for anyone who hasn't been, it's a fantastic venue to go to. But it has been interesting to see. I was thinking the years I've been going to see Paisley changing as well as the book festival's got bigger. You can see a kind of change in Paisley too, a regeneration perhaps in Paisley. A lot of buildings that were previously scaffolded are now back and open again.
yeah, I guess it's that thing where you sort of have to be really patient, don't you? Like it takes years to complete these kind of major projects. And so yeah, like you say, after years of just maybe having certain buildings closed or covered in scaffolding, to have them open to the public again and for people to come and enjoy events. And it's been great to hear some of the stories that people have, of the old town hall. People come in now and they're quite wowed by how beautiful it is, but they also have brilliant stories about events they came to, years ago in the old town hall, and a kind of a long-held affection, I think, for it, even though it clearly needed a bit of TLC. So yeah, no, it's a stunning build. I mean, we are so lucky. I'm lucky to go to a few different festivals around Scotland throughout the year, and they all have their kind of iconic venues in terms of where they're positioned and how they use those spaces. But I think we are particularly lucky with those spaces that we've got in Paisley. So yeah, just trying to make the most of them.
I would have to agree with you. I can remember my first time in the hall after not being there for many years and really being like, wow, this is a sensational space. And of course, as you mentioned, you've got the library, which is another incredible building that's been done up. So before we go into details of this year's festival, I was wondering, over the years, have you kind of developed and stuck to a clear identity of what the Paisley Book Festival is, a kind of guiding ideals, if you like?
I think so. I think it's always been the case, but it really formulated in my mind this year that Paisley Book Festival is a festival that celebrates the best in Scottish writing. And we do have a few writers that come a bit further afield, and we've had a strand of Irish writers coming to join us. But quite often that's been in conversation with Scottish writers and thinking about the links between, Irish writing and Scottish writing. So I think on the whole, our focus as a festival is on trying to showcase the best in Scottish writing, whether that's in fiction, non-fiction, poetry and performance, obviously family, children's writing as well. So that's our focus. We've, I suppose, right from the beginning, like to think of ourselves as having a slightly radical edge in terms of uh, showcasing very much everyday voices, being real champions of working class fiction, and perhaps other marginalised voices who maybe have not felt as represented or heard in other mainstream book festivals. And I think that's something that Scottish writing does very well and has a very long and storied tradition in anyway. And I think it just always felt right for us as a festival in Paisley to be foregrounding some of the lesser heard voices. And those are the voices that actually have often been most popular with our audiences, surprise, surprise. So yeah, we've really leaned into that. So that's kind of the framework, I think, for our festival, what we try to achieve, because there's so much brilliant writing and literature out there, and obviously our festival is just over one weekend, so we try to think about how we can absolutely maximize opportunities for both audiences to discover new voices, but also for authors who are often local or from other parts of Scotland.
Certainly, it's a great programme featuring some great Scottish writers, and we'll go into some details of that. But this year's theme, Everyday Heroes, Everlasting Icons, it's a very interesting one. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, okay. So when I was thinking about what theme to have for 2026, I was thinking a lot about why people come to book festivals. What is it? What's the draw? Why not just sit and read your book at home? Why come out and go to an event and get your book signed? And I thought there is something, isn't there, in the book festival, in that it's this brilliant opportunity to like meet your hero. And one of the most rewarding parts of the festival is watching those signing queues curling around the corridors of the town hall. People who are willing to stand around in a queue for, 30, 45 minutes to meet their literary hero, their icon. So I thought I really want to kind of foreground that in our theme this year, and really think about how this is a place where you come to meet your heroes and also to discover some new heroes, like, who are the emerging voices. And then alongside that, I was also just thinking about that idea as well, about heroes and role models. Who is it that we look up to? I feel like we're kind of living in a world where we're lacking in positive role models at the moment. And I think sometimes in literature, whether that's through fiction or whether it's through non-fiction books and other types of books, it's where we can often really think through, like who do we look up to? And that could be a particular character in a book, or it could be, as I said, the writer themselves. So I thought, really, really nice theme for our children and families program as well, because obviously lots of children's books think about the idea of superheroes or heroes. And I think, we really wanted to explore, like, encouraging people to think about who it is that they look up to in the real world and also in the fictional world, as well as having the chance to come and meet some of those in person at the festival.
You've got an event which the subtitle of which sticks in my mind. It's Everyday Heroes in Tiny Shoes, which I really thought that was a very nice thing, just part of the kids' events that you've got going on in the families events. Could you tell us a little bit about this year's lineup? I know previously it's wrong to kind of ask you to give highlights. I've got a few highlights that I will mention that I'm looking forward to. But in terms of all round this year's lineup, can you give us a kind of overview?
Yeah, so we've obviously got our headline programme, as we always have. So super delighted to be welcoming some brilliant names this year to the festival. Some of which, are popular favourites at the festival and who have some new books out this year, which is really exciting. So notably, Graham Armstrong is joining us again, big favourite at the festival, with his follow-up book to The Young Team. Obviously, that book's done so brilliantly, and so he's bringing Braveheart, which is his brand new novel, which is literally coming out just as the festival happens. And we've also got Jenny Fagan coming along as well, who's been with us before, and her book, The Delusions, which is a bit more speculative fiction than we've seen from her before. So again, that book coming out just before the festival. We've also got a really nice event celebrating two also really favourite authors of our festival. So there's three really, which is we've got three of the fun-loving crime writers coming back, with Christopher Brookmeyer and Doug Johnston, celebrating their collective half century of publishing. So Chris has been publishing, I think, for 30 years now, and Doug for 20. And we've also got Val McDermid doing her event, but also chairing this really special conversation with Chris and Doug. Obviously, they all know each other really, really well. And they're going to be talking about, their half century in publishing and celebrating their new releases. And I think for Doug, it's actually re-releases of a couple of his earlier books. So we've got some really highlight events there. We've also got Damien Barr join us, got David Keenan coming back this year. We've got Nicola Sturgeon coming to talk about her memoir from last summer, which we've not had a chance to showcase yet. So we're excited to welcome her back. She's been with us as a chairperson before, but not actually to talk about her own work. And she's going to be in conversation with Louise Welsh. We've got Sally Magnuson coming. So a really brilliant highlights programme. Graham McRae Burnett coming as well. And then we've got a couple of theme strands. So we've got a strand called Reclaiming History's Heroines. So thinking about our theme of everyday heroes. One of the things I've noticed in Scottish fiction in recent years is just the number of books that are taking figures from history, particularly female figures from history who perhaps have been overlooked or their story hasn't been fully told, and giving this wonderful reimagining of those stories. So you've got brilliant writers like Sarah Sheridan being a really notable one who'll be joining us, Lucy Ribchester, Mary Kidd, various other writers who are going to be joining us to talk about their book. Sally Magnuson is actually also part of that strand with her most recent book as well, The Shapeshifter's Daughter. So we've got that strand, and then we've also got the strand called which is about what nature does for us. So again, another theme that I think you just see a lot in Scottish writing is around being in nature, being in the wild. What does the wilderness sort of do for us? How can the wild maybe be seen, or nature be seen as a kind of hero in our lives in a sort of strange sort of way? So there's some brilliant events there as well. One of which is one of my favourite books of the year, which was Christy de Garris's memoir Drystone, which is sort of all about a woman who faces various challenges in her life and ends up finding the craft of dry stone walling as a way of almost helping her through those challenges and those difficult times. Really beautifully written book. We've also got Molly Hughes and Cal Flynn. Molly Hughes, sort of world record-breaking mountaineer. Cal Flynn, a really well-known non-fiction writer now. Both got books out which really talk about journeying into the wild, and again thinking about that theme of heroes. We think about someone climbing Everest or doing these big adventures, going out into the wilderness and kind of testing their limits as kind of heroes, don't we? So thinking about what that means and hearing from their perspectives. So those are a couple of the kind of key strands that we've got going on, and then we've got loads of other stuff around that, loads of other stuff as usual, lots of poetry and performance. We've got Len Penny coming back this year, who's going to be doing a sort of Scots poetry hour with Michael Mullen. I think Michael Mullen's Goonie is just one of the best poetry collections that's come out in the last year. So I mean, I would hugely, encourage everyone to go and hear Michael read, and various other kind of performance work as well. Is that enough to get us started?
Well, that's enough. I think that's enough to get us started, Jess. We can dig into more of that. You've mentioned some of the ones I was going to flag up as well. But in terms of the themes and strands, you mentioned poetry. You've got some fantastic poetry there, and you've got an Edwin Morgan concrete poetry. It's session 2. I'm a massive Edwin Morgan fan, so that's really exciting. For people who don't know, Edwin's concrete poetry was almost how it looked on the page was as important as the concept of it, and it's still something that people write in today. Perhaps maybe not as popular as it was in Edwin's time. But that's just one of the few literary heroes of mine that you kind of reference in the festival too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So yes, we've got the Edwin Morgan Concrete Poetry Workshop, and we've also got a really nice event with the Alistair Gray Archive. It's a project called Rich Things, which a number of writers and artists and photographers have been involved in creating some new work inspired by the Alistair Gray Archive, including the writer Chitra Ramaswamy, who's going to be with us. So that event is going to be, again, like you said, linking to a kind of Scottish literary icon, but bringing in contemporary voices and contemporary artists who sort of are drawing inspiration from Alistair's work and bringing it to new light. And I think this is, again, something that I think Scottish literary writing world has always done really well, to sort of have these literary figures, these iconic figures, and contemporary writers having those opportunities to respond to and bring to new life their work. So yeah, that's definitely something we wanted to showcase.
Yeah, the work that Saoirse Dallas does with the Alistair Gray archive is amazing. And of course, now they're taking on the Agnes Owens archive as well. And there's new Agnes Owens editions coming out too. You've got your families and kind of kids strands. And a couple of ones I was interested in. One is Poochie Pete's Piano.
Yeah, so I mean, the family day is just a barrel of laughs, really. It's all happening on Saturday the 16th. It's all completely free to attend. Lots
Yeah.
of the events, I think, you know, some of them are drop-in, but some of them you just need to book yourself a free ticket to go along to that. Some brilliant stuff going on in this year. It's actually, I can't take credit too much for the family day because my colleague Louise is the one who really pulls that day off. But yeah, the Poochie Pete's Piano with Dougie Payne, who is from Travis, bringing his first picture book.
Yeah.
So again, someone who's like a bit of a Scottish icon, but here we go. Here he is with his picture book, Poochie Pete and his very big feet.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's going to be a really fun one. It's going to involve songs. It's going to involve some live drawing. We try to make the family day really interactive. So it's not just sit and listen to, I mean, it can be listen to a story, but lots of like, interactive activities, crafts, singing, that kind of thing, just to really keep it really engaging. And you never know, there might even be a character or two wandering around the town hall for little ones to meet.
That was when you sent me the details of the program. I was looking through and I went, I recognize that guy, and went, oh, it's the bass player from Travis.
It's
And
mad, isn't it? How many like well-known people who you know can get into writing children's books, particularly maybe if they've had children themselves. You
yeah,
know, it sort of becomes a new creative avenue for them, and it's really interesting to see and to kind of involve them in the program.
I think that's right. I think there's something about having young children yourself, and you think if you're creative, I'm going to give this a go, and particularly with the kind of musical background too. You mentioned the kind of history aspect, and it is striking that it's a lot of women's history that's being looked at. And you also have workshops going on. You mentioned the Edwin Morgan one. That seems to be an important part of Paisley, is that people can actually get involved. It's not just being perhaps sitting in an audience and waiting to meet your heroes. You can actually it's interactive as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the workshop program has always been a really key part of our program. You mentioned already the concrete poetry workshop. We've also got Etienne Kabwabo coming with a workshop called Building Superheroic Worlds. So Etienne was the creator of Scotland's first Black comic book hero. So he's going to be sharing some of his work and again doing something quite creative in the kind of comic arena. We've also got Spencer Mason with a Poetry is Punk workshop. Last year we had our music strand, and we were doing quite a bit of work around music and celebrating Paisley's music history through our walking tours. So this kind of is almost like a bit of a follow-on from that, thinking about Paisley's kind of the history in punk music and bringing that into kind of writing poetry and performance poetry in particular. Yeah, Lucy Ribchester and Mari Kidd, as I mentioned, doing a workshop on Scotland's forgotten women, you know, writing historical fiction, which I think a lot of people are really interested in doing, and the kind of, you know, how you go about the research side of that, you know, where fact meets fiction. And then a really nice workshop with Peaksmick and called Hear My Words, a vernacular revival, again, all about using dialect in writing, which again, I think is something we've always tried to
Yeah.
include. We've got, you know, Gaelic event in our program this year. We've got Scots focused events and various Scots writers in our program. So having a workshop that really gave people a chance who wanted to have a go at writing, and whether it's a Scots dialect or maybe in a different language dialect, or, you know, using a kind of non-standard forms of language to kind of create their work and have a chance to explore that.
And we've spoken about this before, but there's a schools program as well.
Yes, the schools program runs throughout the whole week and is managed by our lovely school libraries team. So they have authors going into local libraries across Renfrewshire from the Monday of the festival all through the week. So local primary schools go along to their local library to hear from authors. And then we have a couple of days where we have events in the town hall. So some of the schools, particularly the most local ones to Paisley, they actually get to come to the town hall to an event, which I think is really special. And it's something we had wanted to do in the early years of the festival and then it's been really great the last few years since the town hall reopened to do that. Because I think when you're young and you have that chance to leave your classroom and come to, as we talked about, such a standout building like the town hall and hear from a writer and get your book signed or whatever. It really makes it a more of an event and more of an experience, a memorable experience for you. So yeah, really excited to have that program running throughout the whole week.
I think such days can be life-changing. I can remember being taken away to hear people speak, and writers in Scots, that maybe we hadn't got in the classroom, and thinking, oh, these people are relatable more so than either dead writers or American writers, which is perhaps what we were studying. So it could be hugely important, I think, to have the opportunity to go to such things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's I think, as much as being a cultural event for the general public, a festival like ours is very much a community oriented initiative, which is about providing opportunities for people to engage in reading from the youngest age possible, and to feel as if spaces like a book festival are for them and are a place that they might
Yeah.
want to come back to throughout their lives. So yeah, really that's kind of what we're really trying to do. So it's, as yeah, the events, the little ones and the family day, and obviously the schools program are such a core part of that, of building hopefully a really long-term audience and engaged community in books and reading and writing.
So, Jess, I thought I would maybe offer up a few of my, things I'm really looking forward to seeing it this year. And you've got a few people on the program who, some of whom you've already mentioned, and have also been on the Scots Whay Hae podcast over the years. So it's quite nice to kind of see what they're doing now. And the first one I wanted to mention is Kapka Kasabova, who was one of the first guests on this podcast, gosh, about 15 years ago now. She did this amazing book on tango, and how tango had kind of, wherever she went in the world, she looked for tango clubs, and how that kind of made her feel belonging, whether it was Edinburgh or whether it was Argentina. But she's got this book out now, Borrowed Land, which is a kind of investigation into the Highlands.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that one, Alistair, actually, because I'm really excited. We've not had Capca at the festival before, and I think it's such a great opportunity for people to hear from just one of the most intelligent and talented writers that we have to offer. And I think this book, Borrowed Land, is such an important one in terms of taking, the history of the Scottish Highlands and putting it into a context that sort of takes into account sort of modern day, what's going on now in terms of changes in industry, and particularly in developments in the renewable energy. So thinking about, the development of industry throughout time and how that's impacted the land itself, and how it's impacted the people who've lived on the land or perhaps been forced off the land. And then, bringing that up to now and thinking about what's happening now in terms of renewables and kind of the ethical dimension of that, and whether or not that's actually serving the land and serving us or not, and how to do that well and in a truly green and sustainable way. So yeah, I think a really important conversation for us to be having as part of our What Nature Does for Us strand this year, and in conversation with Dominic Hind, who also has a really fascinating book called Drifting North, which again, kind of traces Scotland's kind of role in fossil capitalism. So I think just a really interesting conversation that's going to be had between those two for those that are interested in these ideas around how the land has been treated over time, and then what we're facing into now going forward in the face of climate change.
It's a session that as soon as I read about it, I went, yeah, I want to read those books. They sound like kind of really essential reading. An event you've already mentioned, Chris Brookmyre and Doug Johnson. When I first read Celebrating 50 Years in Fiction, I was thinking, they're not that old. But then I realised you'd broken it down to 20 and 30. And we had Doug on the podcast just recently going through all 20 of his books. It was quite a lengthy chat, but it was great. And Chris Brookmyre's going to be on next month talking about his latest as well. But you're saying Val McDermott's chairing it as well. This is just going to be such an entertaining event. Three of the best speakers about writing and about what they do, and three pals as well.
Yeah, I mean, the best conversations are often the ones where you've got a strong friendship or familiarity between the person hosting and chairing and the authors themselves. So I think, yeah, you're right. This one's going to be a great one. I mean, Chris Brookmyre, a massive favourite locally, obviously, and I think quite ugly one evening, which sort of follows on, from his very first novel Quite Ugly One Morning, a real chance to look back actually and just think, wow, what an incredible career that Chris has had. What a thing for us to celebrate. And then similarly with Doug, republishing two of his earliest novels, Tombstoning and The Ossians, a couple which maybe people who have gotten into Doug's work as he's progressed might have missed those ones. They came right at the start 20 years ago. So certainly the Ossians, following the antics of this Scottish indie band on the road, is one that I hadn't read before. And I think, it's great, a chance to kind of rediscover and look back at the legacy of a career. And I think talk as well in that session about what makes a writer's career, and how the journey that it goes on, how it progresses, which links really nicely, I think, to our kind of theme of thinking about, how do you become a literary hero? I'm sure lots of people are really keen to know.
Absolutely, and have that longevity, which, is still fairly rare. And another person I wanted to bring up, a personal favourite of mine, David Keenan, who's always a great speaker and just a fascinating man, really, just knowledge in terms of culture and music and everything else, and particularly literature. Boyhood, the latest novel, is the next on my kind of rather large reading pile. David's we've had him on the podcast a couple of times, and he's always brilliant company.
Yeah, I mean, David was just with us last year for the first time as part of our music strand. He was in a fab conversation with Stuart Murdoch and Vic Galloway chairing, and they had a riotous time talking about his history of Glasgow's kind of music scene that he'd written. But it was really exciting to find out he had a new novel coming out this year, because obviously as a writer, being so well known for his like you say, sort of expansive, mind expanding fiction that he puts out there, and like you say, his knowledge and what he brings in terms of just an interest in craft and an interest in bringing stories to life in really interesting ways. So I think Boyhood is very much a book that I think will resonate with our audience, very much with fans of your Irvine Welsh and Graham Armstrong and other writers who are very based in the sort of gritty reality of in this case Glasgow kind of working class life. But again, a book that kind of enters the speculative world as well. It's not just sort of gritty reality. It's actually entering into this kind of weird speculative sort of fantasy elements as well. So again, something that David's very well known for doing. So yeah, it'll be a great session. We're really pleased to have him back.
I guess one of the great things about being a programmer is putting panels together, is putting people together. And the next one I wanted to flag up was Jenny Fagan and Kirsten Innes, two of my favourite writers, absolutely. And The Delusions at the moment is my favourite book of the year. You never know what to expect from Jenny Fagan, but I didn't expect this kind of universal but yet very personal look on life and love and loss and all of those things. It's an astonishing book.
Yeah, I mean, I think this book speaks to our theme in this idea of we're thinking about the theme of heroes, not just in terms of people who are well known or people who do things that are objectively seen as great or beyond the ordinary. We really want to use the festival to focus on everyday heroes as well, like ordinary people who we can look at and say, do you know what, they've lived a good life. And I think that's what Jenny Fagan's book, The Delusions, is all about. It's asking these very deeply moral questions about what does it mean to have lived a good life, and it's sort of set in this sort of soul processing center in this imagined afterlife. Really different, I think, to some of the work that we've seen from Jenny in recent years, through her work in memoir and also some of her more kind of historical fiction that she's been doing set in Edinburgh. It's offering us almost a whole new genre from Jenny and a chance to really think about those questions of, what do I want my life to have stood for? And imagine that this actually does happen at the end of life, and what would I want to, for my life to have represented when it all boils down to it at the end. Really, really happy. And obviously Kirsten, we're still hotly awaiting Kirsten's next novel. Sadly, it's not quite out yet. I think it's maybe another year or so away at the moment, but delighted that she's going to chair this event and have a kind of in conversation with Jenny, because like you say, she's another massive favourite of our festival. I think audiences always love to hear from her.
And you've mentioned about already, but I wanted to bring up Building Super Heroic Worlds, because we've had Etienne Kabwabo on the show as well, and what an inspirational guy he is. You've spoken about the comic books, but he managed to put together and get out a feature film as well. The difference between us, it's astonishing the kind of drive and determination and the talent to do all these things. And I think he's now got another. I think Hyena Man, it might be called, another kind of comic book coming out too. He's an incredible character.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, multi-talented, filmmaker, comic book maker, really, really creative person. And I think, you know, when we used to do the festival back in February, we used to tie in just before Will Eisner Week, which is a sort of week that Paisley Renfrewshire Libraries do, just specifically around comics and comic book celebration of all that world. So we've always tried to have an event that then kind of foreshadows or links into that. Obviously now we're a bit later in the year, but still having that as another dimension of our festival, bringing someone in who's got that slightly different creative talent, from maybe other writers, and giving people a chance to engage, who enjoy drawing or enjoy more visual kinds of storytelling, will be really exciting.
And you mentioned that Graham Armstrong's a regular at the festival and a favourite of the festival, but this novel, Braveheart, is perhaps the most eagerly anticipated novel of recent years. I don't want to put any extra pressure on Graham, but it's among them, because Young Team was just such a big novel. I mean, really getting people involved in reading that maybe thought it wasn't for them. You mentioned at the festival, and I think it really is incredibly welcoming to everyone. And I think, being able to do that, to welcome everyone in, means you will introduce people to writers and, books that they maybe wouldn't have found otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, Graham has been coming to the festival since the Young Team was released, to do one thing or another with us. So, but to have a new release from him is really brilliant, obviously, for us this year, and for the book itself to again be a book that ties really nicely into some of the themes we're exploring, about, again, a bit of an unlikely hero as his protagonist, who and a world that is dark, a dark world, which is getting darker, which I think we can kind of all relate to. So yeah, really relatable, really fun. And I think Graham's a really good example of how it's really important that book festivals build these really positive relationships with the writers who are working in the local sphere and who are often the strongest advocates for the festival. And I think that kind of local popularity that Graham has built up through the legacy of the Young Team and all the work he's been doing in communities and prisons and all sorts of projects he's been involved in. And to have him as such a close friend of the festival, and who's someone who, we want writers to say, I went to Paisley Book Festival and it was just, I had a great time, and everyone was so welcoming, and the readers were so engaged and so excited. That's what we want, and we want to build a reputation as being a place that writers want to be. And I think Graham's been brilliant at helping us to develop that through his support.
I mean, I think in the festival in general, you've got this lovely mix of the writers and the audiences. There's not this division that you sometimes maybe get at other festivals. It's a real welcoming, and I've seen people chatting afterwards. It's like you said right at the beginning, to be able to meet your heroes. You maybe don't want to put your hand up and ask a question in a session, but you can meet them, you can have a chat with them, and you can, as you said, get a book. And is Braveheart going to be available at the festival?
It is going to be available. Yeah, it is. It's going to be out. Just managing to get some advanced copies of it. So yeah.
Well, there's no other reason to attend that than to get a copy.
I know.
And talking about that, is you're going to have the usual book shop in the venue.
Yeah, so we're working with the Book Nook again. So the Book Nook, who are based in Stewarton, brilliant independent bookshop. Yeah, and they're going to be, who obviously have their own brilliant events program throughout the year. So yeah, really delighted to be working with them again. And they're going to be selling books from all the writers appearing, and probably some more, over the festival in the foyer of the town hall. So yeah. And
just finally, I just wanted to mention Hebridean Anti-Heroes, which looks like a really good event as well, with Chris Bartley and Graham McCrae Burnett. Ben Becula was one of my books of last year. And I'd really bring it up because I've just found out he's been longlisted for the Crime Writer Association Historical Dagger Awards and shortlisted for the Sir Walter Scott Prize. So Graham is riding high at the moment.
Yeah, Yeah, it felt like almost a bit of a strange event on a festival themed around heroes, because these two books are so much the opposite of that. It's the anti-hero, it's the, it's the person who, yeah, you're maybe not automatically going to like very much in the story. But really, I think by having an event focused on those kinds of figures, which I think so much of our popular culture is, we are interested in the anti-hero, aren't we? Whether it's in TV series and films and things. I mean, you could argue that actually there's a bit of a lack of the traditional hero in fiction and things, because we are so interested in the flawed characters, the characters who are, traditionally seen as the bad guy. So I thought, yeah, to have an event, around anti-heroes. And interestingly, so many of these books set, on the Scottish Islands, particularly on the Outer Hebrides, something about those remote, uh, quite exposed locations, which these kind of dark, mysterious stories seem to fester in. And we've seen that, I think, across sort of various TV series and things in recent years, as well as in fiction. So yeah, it will be good to, I think, explore that darker side with these two books, and again get into the psychology of the anti-hero and what is it that makes them the way that they are.
There's definitely been a growth in that. I'm just writing about and from the Highlands and Islands in Scotland as well. I mean, it's always been there, but I think now the kind of profile has got much bigger. And I could go on for more and more, but I think people, what they should do is just go and find out the programme for themselves. And we haven't told people where they can find details and buy tickets and all of those kind of things.
So yeah, so our website is paisleybookfestival.com. Nice and simple, easy to remember. Our programme is on there, and you can buy tickets through that website, and also follow us on our socials at Paisley Book Festival. So yeah, please follow us and check out the whole program. There's quite a few things that we've not even got to mentioning in this conversation that are going to be really interesting events, and got some brilliant Saturday night, quite exciting, lively showcases and all sorts of things going on. So whatever you're into, whether it's a slightly quieter, more thoughtful conversation, or an interactive workshop, or some loud performance poetry, then yeah, check it out and come along.
Yeah, you really can fill your whole weekend if that's what you would like to do. And before we finish up, Jess, I don't think I've ever asked you this before, but the life of a programmer, where do you even begin to put a program together?
I think you maybe have asked me this before, Alistair, and I always try my best to articulate it to you, I think, or maybe someone else has. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, so my thought process usually starts in the summer, so sort of August. I actually tend to go to quite a lot of events, particularly over in Edinburgh at that time of year, because there's lots of opportunities to see people and hear people. So I sort of start thinking about things then, and the first thing to do is to really try and put together some ideas for a theme, for an overarching theme for the festival, but also to put together a potential kind of headliner list, of lists of some of the writers, some of the big new releases that we'd really like to have come along. So that's kind of the first part of the journey. And then we also put our public call out for events as well, which is something we always do. So, and I would say this year we've probably got a higher proportion than ever before, because we had so many amazing ideas and proposals for events, that I think probably, a good handful of the events in the adult programme and in the family day programme came from that open call out. So I'd really recommend to anyone who has an idea for an event and they want to be part of the festival to get in touch. So that kind of happens through September, through the autumn. And then once we've sort of got our headline programme starting in place, we've got our theme, we know what some of those events are going to be. And then it's just a process of piecing together the other parts of the jigsaw puzzle, trying to get a nice range and diversity, not having too much of one type of book, trying to appeal to different audiences. One event we've not mentioned this year is our annual witch themed event, because witch themed events are so popular in Paisley that we always have to have at least something, I think, and there's so many books always coming out now about witch themes. So yeah, so we've got an event with Anna Craig and Stephen Verripen, one non-fiction book, one fiction book, on that theme of witches again, and revisiting that history. So yeah, thinking about all the kind of different audiences that we know that we have at different kinds of events, the feedback they've given us about what they want to see, pulling together the workshop program. That's kind of what it looks like. There are moments where it feels like a bit chaotic, and I think that's the nature of anything creative. And I think that you know, programming is quite a creative activity. It is kind of about pulling and piecing together all these different elements. But obviously finding all the chair people for the event, such an important role, being the person who kind of hosts the conversation and holds the event and plans how the course of the conversation is going to go. We know that that's really important for audiences actually to feel that that conversation has been held and conducted really well, so that they get the most out of it and they get to hear the best that the authors have to give. So yes, there's that as well. And then from that point onwards, sort of February, March, I get to have a little bit of a rest, but I also spend a lot of time supporting our marketing team at One Wren to get the program all up on the website and get it out into the world, and obviously do things like this to shout about it. So yeah, that's what I do. It's great. It's one of the best jobs. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jess, thank you so much again for taking the time to talk to me, and all the very best with the festival, which looks like being an absolute beauty.
Thanks, Alistair. Thank you so much for your support, as always.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different.